Egypt. I have been here longer than almost anywhere else. Walked these temples when they were new, sat at the feet of pharaohs. Been worshipped, revered, mummified. When I chose to leave a particular form, the Egyptians understood something about cats that other cultures took millennia to learn. We move between worlds. We see the dead, we cross thresholds, and nowhere was the threshold between life and death more important than here. In Egypt, death was not an ending. It was a transformation, a journey, the beginning of something else. The story I am about to tell you is the most important myth in Egyptian history. It created the template for how an entire civilization, lasting 3,000 years, understood death, kingship, love, and resurrection. The Osiris myth concerns the murder of the god Osiris, primeval king of Egypt, and its consequences. Before Jesus, before any resurrection story you know, there was Osiris and his wife Isis, who loved him so deeply, she refused to accept his death. Let me show you what devotion looks like, what love can accomplish, and why the Egyptians believed that death was never final. This is the story of the first resurrection. Osiris was born on the first of 5 intercalated days, a days one by Thoth, grew again with the moon, and added to the 360-day calendar. At his birth, a voice called out, "The good and great King Osiris, Lord of all the earth, has been born." He was tall, slender, handsome, destined to be king. The Egyptians relate that Isis and Osiris were enamored of each other and slept together in the darkness of the womb before their birth. Their love was cosmic, eternal, predestined. But there was another brother. On the 3rd day, Set was born, but not in due season or manner. With a blow, he broke through his mother's side and leapt forth. Violence from the first breath. Aggression as his nature. One of the first acts related of Osiris in his reign was to deliver the Egyptians from their destitute and brutish manner of living. This he did by showing them how to grow crops, by giving them laws, and by teaching them to honor the gods. He taught them farming instead of cannibalism, music instead of violence, law instead of chaos, religion instead of barbarism. Egypt flourished under his rule. The land was fertile. Justice prevailed. The people prospered. The myth relates that Osiris was the first pharaoh, and the one who united Egypt. His rule ensured that balance and justice, Ma'at, were maintained. The Egyptian concept of cosmic order, truth, balance, justice, Osiris embodied it perfectly. And beside him, Isis was depicted, a beautiful and elegant woman, the embodiment of perfection, in the form of a woman, wife, mother, priestess, with magical powers. She was a figure of motherhood and unconditional love. Together, they were perfect, the divine couple, the ideal, and Set watched, and envied, and plotted. Because perfection has always made imperfection murderous. Cyrus had an ugly and evil brother, with red, coarse hair like an ass's pelt. This was Set, a born plotter, who envied the power and attractiveness of his elder brother. But Set's jealousy had layers. Set had another reason for hating Osiris. His own wife, Nephthys, had conceived a child by Osiris, the jackal-headed Anubis. Personal humiliation, political envy, the grinding resentment of being inferior to your older brother in every measurable way. Set represented Isfet, chaos, disorder, violence, the desert's sterility against the Nile's fertility. The myth relates a key philosophical component of ancient Egyptian belief, the ongoing battle between the forces of balance and righteousness, and the forces of chaos. Osiris and Horus represent Ma'at, while Set is an agent of Isfet. Plutarch recounts one version, where Set, along with the Queen of Ethiopia, conspire with 72 accomplices to plot the assassination of Osiris. The number matters, 72 conspirators, elaborate. This was not sudden rage, this was calculated murder. Set had beautiful chest made, ornate, covered in gold, perfectly sized exact Cyrus's measurements. At a great feast in front of all the guests, Set proposed that anyone who entered the coffin and fit perfectly could take it as a gift. Who does not love a prize? One by one, guests climbed in. None fit. The chest was too long, or too narrow, or the wrong shape entirely. Then Osiris's turn came. Set fooled Osiris into getting into a box, which Set then shut, sealed with lead, and threw it to the Nile. The lid slammed shut. The conspirators rushed forward. Molten lead poured into the seams, sealing it completely. No air, no escape. Murder, through suffocation, drowning, imprisonment, death, in darkness and water. Set tricked Osiris into climbing into a wooden chest, cut to fit him, and then sealed the box and threw it into the Nile. The first Pharaoh, the perfect king, the god of fertility and life, dead. And the chest floated away on the current, carrying Osiris's body toward the sea. Set claimed the throne. Chaos had overthrown order. Isfet defeated Mart. Egypt withered under his rule. The land became parched, infertile. Set's reign brought only suffering. Osiris's wife, Isis, searched for his remains until she finally found him. But this was not a short search. This was years, an obsessive, devoted, never surrendering hunt for her husband's body. When searching for or mourning Osiris, the two goddesses are often likened to falcons or kites, possibly because kites travel far in search of carrion, because the Egyptians associated their plaintive calls with cries of grief. The sound of their mourning could be heard across Egypt, two goddesses crying for a murdered god. Meanwhile, the chest had travelled far. She found it lodged in a tamarisk bush, which had grown to a huge tree on contact with the body of the god. The tree grew so magnificent that the king of Byblos had it cut down and made into a pillar for his palace. Osiris's body, unknowingly, holding up a foreign king's roof. But Isis found him, through divine insight, magical power, and unrelenting love. She found him. She brought the chest back to Egypt, hid it in the marshes of the delta, in the papyrus reeds, where Set would not think to look, and there, in secret, she began the work of resurrection. In one version of the myth, Isis used a spell to briefly revive Osiris so he could impregnate her. This is the sacred mystery, the moment that defines everything that comes after. Isis, through magic, brought Osiris back, not permanently, not fully, but enough. Life from death, conception from a corpse, a son created in the threshold between worlds. This is why the Egyptians believed in resurrection, because Isis proved it was possible, but Set discovered what Isis had done. Set was hunting in the desert by moonlight one night. When he accidentally came upon the box that Isis had hidden, he recognized it instantly and opened it at once. As he gazed upon the corpse of his rival, Set's heart filled with implacable hatred and rage. In a mad fury, the evil god tore the corpse of Osiris into 14 pieces. Typhon divided the body into pieces, which he distributed amongst his fellow conspirators, scattered them across Egypt, made them hard to find, tried to make resurrection impossible. If Osiris could not be made whole, he could not be revived. Simple, final. Not long thereafter, Isis heard about Set's latest attack upon Osiris. Her sister Nephthys, although married to Set, was always loyal to Isis. Therefore, Nephthys accompanied Isis and Horus on the search for Osiris. They sailed up and down the Nile, searching, collecting, finding piece after piece. Isis was appalled at this second calamity to befall her husband. But with her customary patience, she collected 13 pieces of Osiris' body from the river. 13 pieces, all but one. Of the parts of Osiris's body, the only one which Isis did not find was the male member, for the reason that this had been once tossed into the river, and the lepidotus fish, sea bream fish, and the pike had fed upon it. And it is from these very fishes Egyptians will not eat. So Isis, with her magical skill, created a replacement, the missing piece fashioned from divine materials. Now she had everything needed, and she would perform a ritual no one had ever done before. The first mummification. The goddesses find and restore Osiris's body, often with the help of other deities, including Thief, a deity credited with great magical and healing powers, and Anubis, the god of embalming and funerary rites. Osiris becomes the first mummy, and the god's efforts to restore his body are the mythological basis for all Egyptian mummification. Every Egyptian who was ever mummified was reenacting this moment. The goddesses connected the various parts with wax. Then, they prepared a long piece of linen cloth by smearing sweet-smelling ointments upon it and sprinkling it with spices. This was not just preservation, this was transformation, making the body a vessel for the soul's return. They performed the opening of the mouth ceremony, restoring function, allowing Osiris to live again in the afterlife, and Osiris's skin became green, the color of growing things, of vegetation sprouting from black earth, of life that comes from decay. Osiris was both the god of fertility and the embodiment of the dead and resurrected king, death and life, ending and beginning, winter and spring, all contained in one being. Isis was able to conceive a child with him, who would go on to become the true king of Egypt. However, Osiris was unable to remain in the land of the living. He was resurrected, but not for long. Just long enough for conception, long enough for hope, long enough to ensure Set's tyranny would be challenged. Isis restores her husband's body, allowing him to posthumously conceive their son, Horus, a child born from a resurrected father, born in the space between life and death, born with a destiny. No spirit which has passed to the land of the dead may live in the land of the living, and so Ra decreed that Osiris should become a king of the underworld. Osiris could not stay in the world of the living, but he would not simply cease to exist. Osiris was not only ruler of the dead, but also the power that granted all life from the underworld, from sprouting vegetation to the annual flood of the Nile River. In the New Kingdom, when Osiris's death and renewal came to be associated with the annual flooding of the Nile that fertilized Egypt, the waters of the Nile were equated with Isis's tears of mourning or with Osiris's bodily fluids. Every year, the Nile flooded. Every year, Egypt was reborn. Every year, Osiris died and lived again through the land itself. Myth made physical. The story written in water and soil and green-growing things. The pregnant Isis hides from Set, to whom the unborn child is a threat. In a thicket of papyrus in the Nile Delta, she raised him alone. In hiding, teaching him everything he would need to reclaim his father's throne. In fear of Set, Isis raised Horus in seclusion. The boy was bitten by beasts, stung by a scorpion, and suffered intense pains throughout his childhood, and only his mother's witchcraft managed to save him. Often, Osiris would appear to the young Horus to instruct him in the arts of war, in preparation for the coming battle with Set, the murdered king teaching his son, the dead preparing the living for justice. The remainder of the story focuses on Horus, the product of the union of Isis and Osiris, who is at first a vulnerable child protected by his mother, and then becomes Set's rival for the throne. Their often violent conflict ends with Horus's triumph, which restores Ma'at, cosmic and social order, to Egypt after Set's unrighteous reign, and completes the process of Osiris's resurrection. But that is a story for another time. What matters now is this: Horus exists. The rightful heir lives. Justice will be restored. Set's tyranny is temporary. Ma'at will return. So what does this myth mean? Why did it matter so much that it shaped 3,000 years of civilization? This dual role was in turn combined with the Egyptian concept of divine kingship. The king at death became Osiris, god of the underworld, and the dead king's son, the living king, was identified with Horus, a god of the sky. Osiris and Horus were thus father and son. Every living pharaoh was Horus. Every dead pharaoh became Osiris. The myth explains succession, legitimized authority, made every transition of power a cosmic event. From about 2000 BCE onward, it was believed that every man, not just the deceased kings, became associated with Osiris at death. Eventually, This became democratized. Every Egyptian could hope to be resurrected like Osiris. Every death was a potential transformation. According to legend, it was Osiris who judged the dead in the Hall of Two Truths. Where the weighing of the heart took place, the murdered king became the judge of the dead. The one who knew death intimately became the one who determined who transcended it. But beneath the kingship symbolism, beneath the agricultural metaphors, beneath the afterlife theology, this is a story about love. Isis was deeply in love with Osiris, her brother, and they joined with great love. She was the embodiment of perfection, in the form of a woman, wife, mother, priestess, with magical powers. She was a figure of motherhood and unconditional love, caring for all with protection, care. Isis refused to let death be final, so searched across Egypt, performed rituals no one had done before, used magic thought impossible, and she succeeded. Not fully. Osiris could not return to the living world permanently, but enough. Enough conception, enough for hope. Enough to prove that death was not absolute. The Egyptians understood something profound. Death is a transformation, not an ending. What you love does not disappear, it changes form. Moves to a different realm. Continues. Osiris, as the green god, as the flooding Nile, as the sprouting grain, as the judge of the dead, as the father of Horus, dead, yes, but also alive, both, always. Every resurrection story you know descends from this one. Every narrative about love conquering death draws from Isis and Osiris. Before Jesus was resurrected, Osiris was. Before any Messiah was born to save a people, Horus was. Before any devoted partner refused to accept their beloved's death, Isis did. And the promise of the myth, that ending's not final. That love persists beyond death. That what seems destroyed can be made whole. That justice delayed is not justice denied. It is justice preparing. That life is stronger than death. Osiris died and lived and became more than he was. Isis mourned and searched and resurrected him. Horus was born and grew and will reclaim his father's throne. The story continues. The cycle turns. The Nile floods, and Egypt remembers. Death is not the end. Love is not powerless. Order will be restored. Mart will return. The Nile flows, as it always has, as it always will, carrying the story of Osiris, Isis, the love that refused death, the resurrection that changed everything.